Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's webcast, Going Digital, the Rise of Digital Freight Brokerage, presented by the Journal of Commerce, part of the Maritime and Trade Division of IHS Markit. On behalf of the JOC, I'd like to thank Redwood Logistics for sponsoring today's program. I'm Alessandra Barrett, JOC Senior Content Editor in the Maritime and Trade Division of IHS Markit, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. Joining us from Redwood Logistics are Mike Reed, Chief Product Officer, Michael Johnson, Executive Vice President of Strategy, and Adam Moreau, Senior Vice President of Sales Operations. Before we begin, I have just a few quick housekeeping notes. Basically, everything you need to navigate the webcast can be found at the bottom of the webcast console via the little widgets listed. You can click on these to find directions for submitting questions, which I highly recommend, the speaker bios, and some additional information. Please note, for this webcast, the presenter slides will not be available post-event. So I will ask everyone to, during the presentation, submit your questions. The more we have, the more we can integrate the questions into the presentation at an earlier point. And we really do want to try and get to everyone's questions. So at any point, just type your question into the Ask a Question area and then click the Submit button. And that's it for me. So Adam, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi there, everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day out there, and we appreciate you joining us and taking some time out of your very busy schedules. And we welcome you to what should be a very interesting discussion about the digital transformation of our business. Again, my name is Adam Moreau, joined by Mike Johnson and Mike Reed, and we're very excited to talk to you about what we are calling Going Digital, right? The rise of the digital freight brokerage. All three of us work very closely together, like I'm sure many of you do and your teams do, on what our technology roadmap looks like and how it's really going to shape and enhance our business. And more than that, also the importance of the working relationship between our business operations teams and our tech teams. And we would argue there has never been a more critical time to really design those digital next steps. And today, again, we're very excited to take you through not only what the overview of the DFB market looks like, but what we are doing at Redwood to really help lead that charge into this digital evolution that all of us are feeling and seeing, but probably many of us are experiencing to different levels and different degrees. So now it's certainly safe to say rather that this is no longer brand new technology or even terminology, but it's also safe to say that this is still very rapidly evolving, right? So we're no longer talking about the creation of DFB, but rather the size of it today, right, and tomorrow, and the next steps of it, and its impact on the direction of our industry. And it's evolving in ways all of us are using and benefiting from the technology. It's transforming companies that are investing into it. And we see firsthand how it's helping to expand and update some of the partnerships we all have together, right, what we can offer one another in terms of speed, price competitiveness, and really, most importantly, how this may be reshaping your expectations and our expectations for all of our partners and who you might be choosing to do business with now and in the future. So today we have what I'm sure looks like a short agenda, but I promise we have a lot to cover in the time you've given us today. And we'll start with a current definition, in our opinions, of what digital freight brokerage means today for 3PL shippers and carriers. And we'll discuss what goes into building DFB and the many aspects that contribute to the digital ecosystem and the changing and growing competitive landscape of DFB that we all find ourselves in, and the inner workings and value that DFB can ultimately provide all of our partnerships. And then we'll finish with some overview information of some of the more exciting connectivity and digital tools in the marketplace right now. So with that said, let's get right into it. So what is digital freight brokerage? It has seemed to take on such impressive shape and influence since the concept first started making its way into all of our conversations, right? It's certainly becoming more mainstream with many of the top tier providers, but also because it's not just limited to a few pure technology providers out there anymore. So simply put, it's matching shippers to more automated capacity, pricing, and load tendering solutions. And in doing so, it will create more scalable and improved market buying capabilities, which ultimately is intended to give digital providers like Redwood the ability to provide all parties with a more successful and progressive partnership. And as I mentioned in the opening, this has been and will continue to be evolving technology with many moving pieces, but we do consider a few of them to be more important components to discuss today. First, the value for brokers and carriers and shippers, right? They're obviously all connected, and a true successful digital partnership will require all three to engage, but ideally all three are incentivized to go this route, right? And we believe the reason the industry is moving in this direction is because all three parties are seeing just that. They're seeing operational improvements and opportunities directly resulting from automation and optimization. And I'll just say, a lot of companies can automate, but how are they optimizing, right? Or even are they optimizing? And as Mike Johnson gets into a little more detail in a little bit after myself, I think you'll hear a lot about that from him, automation and optimization and the benefits of those two concepts actually working together, right? So starting with the carrier, digital tendering automatically identifies the best fit load for any given truck, right? Designed to maximize their routing at the most desirable and necessary operating price, right, for the motor carrier or driver. Now, most of this is also benefiting the broker in terms of speed to finding these highly desirable, best fit trucks, but with a twist of optimized pricing algorithms to make sure the ultimate truck or carrier selected is the one with not only the quickest response time, the best service, the most optimal routing, of course, but also checked and balanced against market pricing, right, and then tendered accordingly. And add better employee productivity for both the carriers and the brokers, not to mention what should be better service to the shippers. And you have a very compelling benefit on that side of the table. For the shippers, obviously, all the reasons it is good for the providers means it's good for the shippers. But really, it also gives them this access to truly the best fit capacity for their freight without just having to take someone's word for it, right? This is people-enhancing technology, and shippers are benefiting from these digital partnerships, not just from the more basic operational enhancements of capacity selection and procurement access, but everything from FP&A to automated tracking to more digital cloud-based connectivity solutions as well, which Mike Reed will get into at the end of our presentation. And we'll talk more in a few slides about the genetic makeup of DFBs and really what it means to have a deeper procurement access, and then what is the end game? Is it full automation? Probably not, but maybe in some cases, but probably more of intentional steps forward into the technology game for most players, and then actually the reverse for some of the technology players, right, who are starting to invest more into the human touch to complement some of their platforms. And lastly, market size and projected market size, which we'll get into right here on our next slide. All right, so moving on to market size and projected growth, frankly, it's both very exciting but also very eye-opening to take a look at some of the projected numbers around DFB technology. This is not automated trucks. This is happening now, and we will be growing at an incredible clip in the near term, which is why we believe so many of you are interested in learning more about this and hearing some of this information, and why we at Redwood and so many others are investing so heavily into digital technology and the people that DFB supports. This is unavoidable. It's impossible to ignore. It's transformational change on a huge scale that this industry is moving towards, right? No other way to put it. Incredible stat right there on the right that over the next 8 years, DFB gross revenue is expected to be $89 billion, or roughly 50% of the industry total. Now, clearly, 8 years is a long time, right? But it's moving quickly. And to see compounded annual growth of 34% during those years is something we should all be very strategically prepared for. And before I turn it over to Mike Johnson, two Mikes on this call, we'll go Mike Johnson first, to really start talking about the details of DFB. I know there is a lot of data in this chart, but I'd like to draw your attention to just a couple of rows. First being the mix of traditional brokerage in the gray, about halfway down, and how it's basically declining each year by 5%. Well, of course, that means that DFB is growing by 5% a year. And right now, we're sitting around 90% traditional, 10% DFB. 10% is a lot when thinking about the size of our industry, but even as we get so excited talking about it today, and really every day in our world, it's not on everyone's radar just yet, right? But in a few short years, that goes to 20% and 30% automation. And then you're really talking about an environment where it's impacting a lot of businesses in a lot of ways. And lastly, as a direct impact to everyone in this audience, no matter who you are, shippers, brokers, carriers, please look at that top gray line as well. Assumed traditional brokerage take rate, and look at the blended take rate as well, just below it. And notice both of them going down over time as automation rises, right? DFB is designed, at the same time it increases productivity, it can also streamline businesses and should be able to create that lower required operating margin over time, which certainly can impact everyone on this call. And with that, let's turn it over to Mike Johnson to really start getting into how this type of ecosystem is built and how it operates.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I think before I get started, I do want to call out the numbers Adam just mentioned. We looked at the chart, and I'll go back for a second. Traditional brokerage is forecast to grow from $71 billion in 2020 to $89 billion in 2028. So despite digital freight brokerage coming on to the scene, traditional freight brokerage is still expected to grow. If you look at the digital freight brokerage gross revenue in 2020, we're expecting to see that grow from $9 billion in 2020 to $89 billion in 2028. So what that means is the entire brokerage industry as a whole is expected to more than double in size over the next 8 years. And the digital brokerage footprint will grow by 10 times. And I think calling that out and thinking about the opportunity that will present to all of us on the call is just extremely exciting. And that by understanding these trends, it just really highlights the massive amount of opportunity for all constituents, shippers, carriers, brokers, and entrepreneurs to be part of the transformation, part of the collaboration, and influence the value that this movement can have in driving, business value across the supply chain. And like I said, I think it's an exciting time for us, and we're at the early innings of some big change that we'll see happen around us. But now, just switching gears a little, I'm going to dive into some of the components that are really required to build and execute a digital freight brokerage ecosystem. So the first component we'll talk about, and really one of the most critical pieces of a digital freight brokerage, is pricing. The market to move freight is fluid, and it varies greatly based on supply and demand, as we've seen this year. I can't remember in my 13 years in this industry seeing a more unpredictable and volatile market. So in order to accurately predict what the price of a truckload shipment should move for, Redwood Logistics subscribes to real-time, high-fidelity market indices in order to create a cost distribution profile for each and every lane in the United States. And what that looks like is really just similar to the bell curve you see on your screen. In addition to subscribing to market indices to create this rate profile for lanes and shipments, we're also incorporating billions of dollars of our own historical freight data to give us a more accurate prediction of what the cost will be for Redwood. And I think that's really important. And we'll talk a lot about the importance of scale later on in the presentation. But the value of leveraging internal data in order to predict future outcomes for your business cannot be stressed enough. It's one of the primary reasons many of the newest digital freight brokerage are on this race, and they're willing to subsidize their growth for scale. And it's why the large incumbents are pouring billions of dollars into technology and pricing science in order to operationalize this data. And I think that last point is important to call out also. Data that you can pay for and acquire definitely serves a purpose, but to me it should be mostly used to establish a baseline and benchmark performance. In the same vein that if you can pay for the data, it inherently is somewhat commoditized. The most valuable and important data for carriers, shippers, and brokerages is their own operational data, and how they use that data to drive performance and benchmark areas they need to focus on is critical to staying competitive in the industry. So next, building a carrier marketplace. This is really the next big component to building a successful digital freight brokerage, is having a large capacity network if you're operating nationwide, or a really dense carrier network if executing a regional brokerage service offering. And like pricing, the best source for carrier network data is to look internally. Brokerages that can operate within their own private carrier relationships and leverage their TMS to effectively source trucks for their freight are best in class. The carrier team at Redwood Logistics, we're able to leverage our proprietary LoadRunner TMS to build, manage, and execute against tens of thousands of empty backhaul trucks on a daily basis. And then for freight that runs outside of our core lane networks, we're also partnering with the largest public sources of capacity to acquire lane insights and variable coverage. Digital or not, the most important thing that brokerages should focus on is becoming carrier-centric and investing in their carrier partnerships, long-term relationships. And that's really a core initiative at Redwood, is to focus on carrier partnerships that will withstand the ups and downs of any market. We want to be additive to our carriers and not just another transactional broker. And so finally, how do we bring the pieces together and implement our digital freight strategy with carriers using our pricing data and the capacity insights? Our execution is really tied to the three pillars you can see on your screen, which are matching, ranking, and pricing. Each of these functions is being driven by our data science team at Redwood and utilizes machine learning to improve outcomes in the future. The first item, carrier matching, brings together the capacity insights we have and provides a list of recommended carriers for every single shipment. The next step in the process, ranking, is a relevance engine that prioritizes which of the carriers is the best fit for each shipment. And what I mean by that is, to give you an example, if after the matching process, 50 carriers have been identified as a good fit for a shipment, the ranking process will then recommend the order that those 50 carriers should be offered freight. And we're using that tool both digitally, but also to guide our workforce on optimal carrier selection. And it's an internal initiative to promote that number and maintain a high score. And finally, because pricing is highly dynamic, we employ algorithms to set the correct offer prices for carriers based on market conditions. And finally, unlocking the network effect. So a few years ago, as we were building our digital freight strategy, our core focus was on building the best TMS in the market that could capture and utilize capacity networks with precision. Our operators spent years building, and still are building, as many long-term relationships that they could with carriers in order to build up the liquidity of trucks within our network. As I mentioned, on any given day, we have tens of thousands of transactional, daily available capacity trucks or longer-term regular backhaul pieces of equipment, we're looking to load on behalf of our carriers. And that's what we recognize as a core competitive advantage from a service and a cost perspective compared to a load board dependent brokerage that may rely primarily on commoditized and transactional capacity. We believe our ability to deploy flexible capacity solutions within our own carrier relationships is the value that we bring to shipping partners. And as we've discussed, we're investing in automating many of the operational touch points within the life cycle of a shipment. But ultimately, we're focused on driving as many freight matches through our digital carrier marketplace on behalf of shippers that we can. And the network effect that we've built is paying dividends. As a larger percent of our operation becomes automated, and that has direct benefits for both our shipper and carrier partners. And just, candidly, it's been neat to be able to see that within the operation at Redwood, especially in a difficult year for predicting capacity and predicting pricing. And finally, as an organization that manages shipping warehouses and also our own private fleet of trucks, we want to be a digital freight brokerage that can offer shippers agility and scalability based on their own business needs and provide uninterrupted service during swings in the market. So with that, I'll catch my breath. I'll turn it back over to Adam, who will talk about the competitive landscape of digital freight brokerage.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Give you a short breather here. I want to highlight that much like the technology itself, the landscape has been evolving rapidly as well, right? We've seen this developing convergence between analog and digital, I think, in what have been traditionally procurement-focused companies and traditionally technology-focused companies sort of meeting in the middle right there. As the visual suggests, somewhere in there exists the middle ground that a few players on both sides are migrating towards, right? The technology companies have realized there is more to a successful partnership than that technology platform, right? And they're investing heavily in people to support it so they can create a more traditional 3PL experience for the clients while still operating on that cutting edge technology. On the other side, where we find ourselves is obviously the more crowded side, but at least currently a relatively small subset of those top tier logistics companies that have built their success on enabling their people with technology, right? Not quite to the levels of digital automation of the Ubers and the Convoys just yet, but we're investing hugely into the digital side of the business to complement our experience and successful operating models that we're built on, right? But each side is recognizing the importance of the other, right? To not just survive, but thrive in those next 8 years I mentioned before. And as we make it to a 50% digitally weighted industry and environment, so you're going to see your top tier 3PLs drastically increase their IT budgets to create more digital capabilities to enhance their already experienced operations, right? And top tech companies, again, investing more in the experienced people to help drive better execution, on their tech platforms. And the fact is, people do move at different paces, right? And while a few of us that you see on this slide are moving very quickly, that won't necessarily be the case for all. And without a doubt, no one company can come in and completely disrupt and upend such a fragmented market, right? But there may be small segments that never go digital, or certainly take way more maybe than the 8 years to do so, and that's okay. But the overall market is certainly going there, and the ones who balance the people and technology the best, we believe will have this tremendous scale advantage that Mike was talking about in terms of what we can offer to our partners, both shippers and carriers. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Mike to talk more about that carrier side of the experience.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. We can we'll jump into some of the inner workings of digital freight brokerage, but I want to start with carrier partnerships. And for Redwood, carrier relationships are really one of the most critical drivers of success for executing our own digital freight brokerage strategy. one of the main reasons incumbent 3PLs have been so successful at protecting and growing market share is because of these long-term relationships that they've built with carriers within their networks. And these relationships, you know, they're not commodities. They take years to develop, and it requires investment from both parties, both the brokerage and the carrier. And, you know, fundamentally, I don't think that we believe an app will ever replace the role of a logistics operator, because the logistics operator will always have protecting the best interests of a carrier. And really the reason these relationships pay the biggest dividends is because of that trust and the reliability. The single point of contact, the person you can depend on and work with for years, I think will serve carriers the best. And if we can introduce automation and reduce some of the friction, both parties win in that relationship. And that's really the goal we're focused on at Redwood. We're focused on investing in technology, but also on our operators. We fundamentally believe that the role today of a logistician will be more important in 8 years as they're equipped with better technology and better data, and they can continue to promote carrier development and engagement. And we never want to lose the human factor at Redwood or depersonalize the experience for any of our carrier partners. Carriers and brokers that form strong relationships, develop system connectivity, and lower operational drag, I believe will be the biggest winners from digital transformation over the next 8 years. And finally, as Moreau mentioned, there will be a segment of the trucking market that will be slow to adopt and leverage new technology. And that's based primarily because the industry is so large. Historically, our industry has been a slower mover to adopt digital tools. And we're also so fragmented. Tens of thousands of carriers are going to continue to operate over the phone. And, you know, I think we see that in the growth of the traditional freight brokerage market as well over the next 8 years. A lot of our business processes today won't change and won't be disrupted. And so Redwood's really trying to execute a hybrid approach to our brokerage model to ensure that we can continue to maintain all carrier relationships, leverage our TMS to keep carriers loaded, and continue to drive the utilization of all pieces of equipment, whether you're, you know, on the analog or digital side of the fence. So consistent freight opportunities. When I look at a segment of the supply chain, I really consider consistent freight opportunities one of the best areas to leverage automation within the supply chain for shippers, carriers, and brokerages. Technology is making it easier and easier to discover, develop, and execute synergies across high-volume freight lanes for both shippers and carriers. And my prediction is I expect digital freight brokerages to continue to acquire market share in this area of the supply chain for 2 reasons. First, digital freight brokerages like Redwood can utilize multiple technologies, both off the shelf and proprietary, to automate several portions of the life cycle of a shipment, including load tendering, shipment tracking, and order settlement for these consistent freight opportunities that have predictable outcomes for shippers and carriers. And second, large brokerages and shippers with scale, they can leverage their network effect to maximize truck utilization and help their carrier partners eliminate waste on an ongoing basis. And finally, one more just major advantage of the digital freight brokerage model is increasing tender lead time, which we have seen is directly correlated with higher tender acceptance percentages from carriers. So designing systems and processes that focus on providing available freight opportunities to your carrier base as soon as they are made available will significantly impact carrier compliance and cost avoidance in the spot market. It's also important not to spam your carrier base with freight opportunities that might not be relevant for them. It's important to target your freight opportunities to the most relevant carriers based on their network needs. And this reduces the incidence of false positives for carriers, and it allows them more time to plan their equipment. Ultimately, as shippers, brokers, and carriers will all benefit from sharing visibility to freight that needs to move as soon as it becomes available. Shippers should look inward at maximizing tender lead time for transportation providers. Brokerages like Redwood benefit by providing instant visibility to freight to relevant carrier partners as soon as it's ready to assign. And carrier partnerships are strengthened by giving them plenty of time to maximize the utilization of their equipment. And so now I'll turn it over to Mike Reed, who will introduce the role of ecosystems and connectivity in the digital freight brokerage space.
Awesome. Thanks, MJ. Thanks, Adam, and thanks everybody, like Adam said before, for taking the time to join us today. Super excited to get a chance to speak to this as near and dear to us, obviously, as we're living and breathing this, as I know a lot of you are every day. Before I go into the ecosystem component, I actually do want to go back to the last slide real fast that MJ was referring to. As we look at kind of maybe this a little bit more from a micro level of where these things are maturing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, this particular area is something, at Redwood at least, we see some of the biggest strides in terms of change over the last year, the last few months, as more and more companies are moving towards this digital, more modernized digital way of being able to do the load tendering process. So whether that's shippers to the brokers, shippers direct to carriers, or brokerages to carriers, and that vice versa, that negotiation that goes on, we're seeing a very large amount of that moving digital. And moving from traditional EDI processes to more automated API processes. And really, what that really does, and MJ highlighted the benefits in this slide, but the real root of it is the contraction of the time it takes to be able to do these interactions. If you back up 5-10 years ago, lots of phone calls, lots of faxes, lots of emails going back and forth around these topics. And if someone is sitting at their desk and it takes time for these things to bounce back and forth, and processing times on vans in between EDI messaging, it's a very elongated process, and that shrinks the lead time, as MJ was mentioning. So we're seeing a very large, uptick of that, as well as a lot of our industry, brethren are in that. And we believe that that will continue to rapidly accelerate as just one area of particular focus. So what that means from a ecosystem standpoint, at least to us at Redwood, is really being the conduit for what I'll kind of call interoperability within the ecosystem. It might seem like common sense, but at least to us at Redwood, we know that one size integration doesn't fit everybody, whether that's the integrations with the shippers or our integrations or operational processes with our carrier partners. And we really are striving to take a kind of a multi-pronged approach to that, to be able to basically work with all of our partners on the varying sides of the network in basically the way that they feel most comfortable and is the most efficient to them. So what that really does at the end of the day is that allows us to be able to build a stronger network, a deeper network, and allows for those shipper and carrier partners for Redwood to be able to basically be more effective because they're operating within their TMS. Maybe this is a point-to-point integration for something like we just talked about on the load tender side. The people don't need to be able to move back and forth between systems. The connection time is greatly reduced. And then you also need to think about the wide, scale of breadth from a Fortune 100 shipper to somebody who ships 1 to 2 LTL shipments a month. And then on the exact same thing on the carrier side, what are the types of connectivity and interfaces that each of those different, company personas would want to be able to leverage? And those things can be drastically different. But the Redwood approach is be able to help facilitate that integration and basic digital connectivity across the entire spectrum. So when we look at that holistically, then we're getting into a lot of specific methods for connectivity. So I'll cover it in a couple slides from now, but there's another whole segment to Redwood's business on top of the digital freight brokerage, which really focuses on platform connectivity. And it's a real strength within our customer base, and we believe that leverage helps drive a lot of the value that then throughout these other business units we're able to provide back to our customer and carrier partners. So that really stems from being able to quickly and easily integrate the TMS, the ERP, the WMS, and other segments within these supply chain technologies together. And at the end of the day, that drives automation between these systems, and that automation drives agility between all the different types and components within the business. So before I get into that, I'm going to dive into one more specific topic as we're kind of thinking about kind of the general freight life cycle, and that's tracking and visibility, something that's kind of near and dear to me personally. There's been a lot of push and maturity within the tracking and visibility space and segments. Gartner has done a good job of kind of framing out what that visibility space is, and I believe they're actually putting together a Magic Quadrant now, which is one of the fastest, growth things that they see within the supply chain technology space. And it's really a testament to me of the value that comes from, real-time visibility of multimodal freight. And it's a really key component of the value prop that that digital brokers can help provide throughout their customers. And frankly, a lot of efficiencies that can be also gained with their carrier partners if done properly. So if you'll see at the top, there's a number of kind of leading supply chain partners that are building out this visibility space, a lot of different types of connectivity methods where historically this would be done via check calls or cell phone triangulation or EDI 214 messages in the domestic freight side. We're seeing a lot of pretty rapid improvement in terms of the nature in which real-time data is being interchanged within these systems and then outside of them as well. Obviously, the influx of North American ELD market has been, a big accelerator within this space and this overall topic. Being able to pull live geo coordinates from ELDs is able to help create a much more fluid data exchange without having to do a lot of those manual components. And really, at the end of the day, it's being able to aggregate this data from a number of varying sources in a clean and concise manner, which then allows to be able to provide the value back to the different parties once that data is aggregated, cleaned, and normalized. So from that, you're able to basically drive exception management processes, and I could spend a whole nother hour talking about the different types of things that our shipper partners have done with real-time visibility data. But just from a high-level standpoint, you're able to dig in and really see how this, inbound and outbound real-time freight is able to change some of the nature and the behavior within within your warehouses, and then obviously to the end customers as well, but for both an inbound and an outbound standpoint. And it really, back on the carrier side, like I mentioned before, it really helps to be able to streamline that communication process where drivers and dispatchers don't have to take as many phone calls and emails to be able to achieve the same, if not a higher quality desired result in order to be able to get the visibility that the end shippers end up requiring at the end of the day. MJ mentioned this topic a little bit earlier, but I just wanted to double down on it for a moment. And really what this is the automated, the future of what we would kind of call our automated pricing. So both MJ and Adam talked a little bit before about how Redwood does pricing, but we believe the future here, specifically in this context, is around the interoperability of those live rates. So you don't have to be able to call a rep at a digital broker anymore to be able to get that rate. You don't have to email them, or you don't have to go into a portal to be able to find that. We now have the ability via a high fidelity rating API to be able to integrate directly that language connectivity directly from a system to system standpoint. This really allows our shipper partners to be able to expand their capabilities and really decrease the time it takes to do certain things, whether that, like you see here on the slide, whether that's performing benchmarking, looking at different optimization scenarios within their TMS, or feeding, kind of generalized data back into a control tower, whether it's real-time pricing like we talked about, or visibility data on the previous slide. Holistically, it gives them the ability to centralize and clean and have a source of clean data that they're then able to leverage for things, like general analytics or looking at broader looks basically at the spectrum over large time frames. So at the end of the day, this is one of our largest growing kind of technology segments that we are seeing our customers move into. We do believe that this is one of those prongs of, overarching digital freight brokerage that is starting to really accelerate within the space now. So there's a lot of really exciting things coming in the future here in this general category. I'm going to change gears just a little bit here in the back half, and then I believe we're going to go into Q&A from here. But I wanted to kind of just broaden it up a little bit without doing a full sales plug, and just kind of talk a little bit about some of the rest of Redwood's service offerings, because we do truly believe that Redwood offers some uniqueness in the industry as it comes to specifically our connectivity and digital tool sets that run basically in parallel to what we just talked about here on the digital freight brokerage side. So one of the other business units, I'll call it, from a Redwood standpoint is our RPS business. And you see here it's really built on three major pillars. One of them I just mentioned a little while ago was kind of around system connectivity. We have a proprietary enterprise SaaS product called Redwood Connect, which our customers are able to leverage to be able to basically increase the speed in which they're able to do A to A or B to B system integrations. And what we found, and even from a digital freight standpoint, where we're looking at something like that rating API we just talked about, that really helps to drive time to value by able to have something like Redwood Connect that's able to drastically decrease the time, the need for high-paid engineering resources, where Redwood can basically manage that segment with this proprietary SaaS tool for our customers and be able to provide very quick time to value to be able to interconnect any number of systems together. We also offer within that group a little bit more on the consulting side. So from a TMS implementation standpoint, we work very heavily with Oracle and MercuryGate, as well as a number of other TMSs, to really help our customers gain the most leverage that they can out of the TMSs, whether that's from a first-time setup or more from a health check type standpoint. And then back on the digital brokerage side, that allows a lot of times when our teams are getting in and looking at these specifically from that health check standpoint, it allows our teams to be able to see opportunities where they might not be taking advantage of the digitization on the brokerage front with their 3PL partners. Whether that's Redwood or another 3PL that they might work with, we can bring those to the table through this implementation team that helps them kind of surface these things and makes kind of these discussions that we're having a reality for a lot of our customers. And then having data flowing through, a modern, channel, something like Redwood Connect and API-driven data into modern platforms. Another piece of our business is really being able to help take that data from a business analytics and intelligence standpoint and helping our customers be able to get more out of it. So we talk a lot about, this exchange of real high quality data, but what do you actually do with it? And what are some of the things that you can then take your operation in your organization to the next level with? That's just the third aspect that we see as a big driving piece within the segment of the industry. And then last but not least, just diving in just a little bit more to kind of Redwood Connect and the value that it provides. I've spent a lot of my career working with different customers, different shippers around very complex system setups, the intricacies and the interwovenness of them, whether that's within the supply chain space or broader ecosystems. And we truly believe and have proven it with many of our customers that being able to pull and leverage our Redwood cloud integration and Connect products allow for a more seamless way of being able to transmit this data. And it really opens up the possibilities from a digital brokerage standpoint that our end shippers are able to take advantage of when they're all flowing through the same channel. So I believe what we're to the end of our provided presentation at this point. I think we will turn it over for questions next, I believe.
Great, yes. I want to thank all of you for a great presentation. It's such an exciting segment of the industry. We have so many good questions come in. I just want to remind everyone, we've got a good 10, maybe 15 minutes to go through these questions, but we will try and answer any that we don't get to, we'll try and do by email. So please keep submitting them and we will, plow through as many as we can. So I will kick it off and I'm just going to throw these questions out there and you guys can pick who wants to respond. So first one, in the matching, ranking, pricing dynamics, what is the time horizon for a highly reliable, accurate pricing and capacity model, hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and annually with particular shipper volume commitments? Tell me if you want me to repeat that.
Yeah, actually, if you could repeat that one more time, I want to make sure I understand this. This is Mike Johnson.
Sure. Okay, so in the matching, ranking, pricing dynamics, what is the time horizon for a highly reliable, accurate pricing and capacity model? And then it says hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, and annually with particular shipper volume commitments.
Sure, understood. I think that's a really good question. And I think the best way for me to answer that today is that, the digital freight brokerages that have the capacity and the technology to provide rating APIs, by and large, are doing that, with a lead time of say 24 hours is around the industry standard that I've seen. So I think in order to move the needle and to advance, from say the third inning of this transformation to the sixth or seventh, we have to follow the path Mike Reed was just describing, which is, start to get better at platform connectivity and the sharing and transferring of data more in real time, not just between brokerages and shippers, but also between brokerages and carriers and shippers and carriers. And when we have that platform connectivity, I think we'll have a higher fidelity and just really a higher confidence in the capacity that exists and being able to dispatch that capacity, on an hourly, with an hourly lead time, with a rate commitment that is durable, if you will. So I don't have the exact time horizon. I expect us to continue to stack small wins over the next 2, 3, 4, 8 years to move the needle. In the past 4 years, we've gone from, basically a non-real-time pricing environment where brokers were still providing rates over the phone and through email to now brokerages like Redwood are providing thousands of real-time quotes on a daily basis programmatically. So I think we'll get there. It's just really, I think, about the time it will take for the evolution of more platform connectivity to exist.
Yeah, MJ, I totally agree with that. Sorry, just to double down on it. I do want to highlight, the real-time nature of the tool sets, right? Whether that's the pricing API like we talked about multiple times, but the machine learning and the algorithms that live underneath that are fluctuating, their data in real time based on a whole slew of different, proprietary data, internal data, external data, and they're tuned. So if our rating API provides a specific quote for a very set of circumstances, there's a good odds that, if you run that exact same quote 10 minutes later, it will provide a slightly different rate. It might not, but it really depends on all those different dynamics. To MJ's point, though, that's just the black box. That interconnectivity with all of the partners external to Redwood or to another digital freight broker is really where the time lag would come from, in my opinion.
So I'm going to jump to another one. How does the system manage a dynamic market like we have now in Southern California, where we face extreme capacity issues?
Yeah, I'll take that one as well, and Reed or Adam, if you want to jump in. But I think that's really the value of that internal private marketplace we've created is, when there's periods of very high demand, oftentimes, some of the public load boards experience, very large degrees of cost elasticity, and you'll see prices surge. Generally, they're directly correlated with what demand looks like. If you follow the load to truck ratio or the market demand index, they're correlated and they spike, and that's where large brokerages that have their own carrier relationships and their own posted networks of capacity can insulate some of that cost inflation that occurs, and also dispatch capacity that's a little more reliable than, say, carriers that are, maybe smaller and looking to make the highest dollar amount. What I've seen in the past 13 years, and especially early on, is, certain carriers are relationship based, and also there's another set of carriers that are also, they're just trying to make the most, money per shipment and keep their miles moving. What that can lead to at times is them jumping from load to load and higher service failures. So I think that actually helps legitimize what digital freight brokerages can bring to the table with a expanded source of posted and private capacity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's exactly what we're not just selling, we're executing on, right? It's not, we're not going to control the volatility in the market. We're just going to respond, I think, more calmly to it with that big subset of carrier data that we know we can turn to, right? So you talk about any influx in any area where capacity is tight and we need to respond quickly for our clients and our shippers. Having that really deep bench, call it, of carriers that we know that internal data is reliable. We've been collecting it for years and we're building upon it. I mean, that's sort of what helps us respond in ways that I think non-digital providers might not be able to, because it will be more panic naturally if providers do not have that deep bench of carriers that they know they've been collecting and relying on that data for years.
With regard to ecosystems, to what extent might there be a proverbial 4PL digital solution, like an Indeed for brokerage, electronically scraping from a range of competitors to meet the customer need seamlessly, so the network connectivity is not just with clients, but with a breadth of service providers?
That's a fantastic question. I can take the lead on that, and if you guys have other follow-ups. But you know, there's a number of companies they're kind of starting that process, but I don't believe any of them have really hit that. You know, if you mentioned Indeed on the job search side, nobody's really reached that critical mass yet, in my personal opinion. But one of the things that we are striving for here at Redwood, and I think I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier with the Redwood Connect platform, is to be able to re-leverage a lot of that work that those teams have done in more of a generic, platform model that allows our customers to be able to tie into multiple system integrations easily and seamlessly, because it is a platform that allows for very easy reuse and reliable reusability. So I don't think, to answer the question again directly, I don't think anybody has reached that mass yet, but we do believe that that is the focus of the future, and we have a strong belief that our Redwood Connect platform will be able to help power our customers to be able to achieve those results in a very short time frame.
Great. Anyone else on that one? Okay.
No, I think
you shared about the go ahead. You shared about the value of carrier relationships and trust. Do you see a change increase in brokerage and shipper relationship and trust? If so, how will that impact things when capacity is tight?
I can start off this one, MJ. So really, it's about this trust. I think this really comes back to our ability to service at a high level and provide that deep bench of capacity I was just talking about when things are tight, right? So the last several months, obviously, we've all been involved in quite a market, right, where capacity has been a challenge, and we predict that will continue to be so for the rest of this year and into early next year. So really, our ability to capture the capacity and continue to deliver on very, as Mike put it, very durable rates during some very volatile markets, I think that's where the trust is built, right? So as more digital success is built up between these partnerships between companies like Redwood and all of our shippers and even our carrier partners, to see it work during these times, I think is a testament to the actual technology, right? To see the digital side of our business grow in ways that, we really obviously had planned on, but it's great to see the pace at which the digital side of our business is picking up during what would be, perceived as a more challenging time to do so when capacity is tight. But to see it work so well, it's just pushing the technology conversations forward in ways that we're very excited about with our shippers and our carriers, because it's working right now. Whether capacity is tight or not, that's sort of proving it out at a level that we're even more proud of right now, just to really show that capacity is available, and the digital solutions that we've created are capable of finding them and locking them in during the toughest of times.
Yeah, and I'll add to what Adam just said by just saying that, excuse me, I think as some of these new tools become available and technology, continues to evolve, expectations are changing, and shippers and brokers they have to be transparent with one another. And so as that transparency increases, I think you'll see the shipper brokerage relationship increase. And we've already seen the first round of this with sort of the wave of instant visibility and tracking, and Mike Reed covered some of that. I think now as we're getting into real-time pricing visibility, and as shippers have more options to deploy throughout volatile times, it will come down to the brokers that can execute and stand by their commitments and are true partners to the shipping community.
Great. Now, I am conscious of our time. We're going to go over for one more question. We want to let everyone know that this will be available on demand if you have to jump off. You can catch this later. Do you foresee a convergence between the TMS vendors and the DFB vendors from an M&A perspective? Clearly, TMS vendors must offer the access to capacity that DFB vendors offer, it seems.
That is a phenomenal forward-facing question, to be honest. I do see a convergence of not just only the TMS vendors and the digital freight brokerage vendors, but also the third aspect to that I would add and would be the supply chain or logistics-focused enterprise SaaS companies. So we are seeing already a convergence where a lot of those companies have been acquired or have provided, deeper partnerships with certain DFB vendors or TMS vendors. At the end of the day, this is just a very complicated network of lots of different companies that are trying to find their right fit as it revolves around this very giant ecosystem. Yeah, I definitely do see a convergence. I think in the short to midterm, you'll continue to see, like I mentioned before, more partnership-driven things where you're able to, for example, get access to rating APIs like we talked about earlier through top-tier third-party TMSs, whether you need to, go into some sort of app store to enable them, or you need to work with somebody on the IT side, those barriers to entry for these types of quick integrations will be lowered. And then I think from there, you'll start to get into, well, does it make sense for a TMS vendor to build something like this? No, probably not. Does it make sense for a DFE vendor to build a full-fledged TMS? No. So let's think about how, from a macro industry standpoint, a lot of these things are going to start to converge, and you will see M&A activity clearly within those spaces.
Yeah, and I'll actually add a point on that as well, which is I think it's a necessary reality that TMS vendors and DFB vendors will start to collaborate. The question I will have is, how successful they will be over time at, again, competing with some of the brokerages or even the new entrants that have been able to, race to acquire scale. I think ultimately for shippers, at what point does the TMS and DFB market become commoditized again, and where are the points of differentiation? And I think that's a question we're all trying to answer. And as a very large brokerage, we want to stay at the forefront of, our own competitiveness in the industry and make sure we're offering real value. So it's something I think we'll see play out to support, the 10,000 plus brokerages in the market that might not have all of the tools themselves. But I do think you'll see the largest providers respond to that with, their own position of competitive advantage.
Great. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, everyone, for submitting such great questions and for hanging with us for another couple minutes. As I mentioned, unanswered questions will be followed up with by email. The webcast will be available on demand within 24 to 48 hours. You'll receive an email reminder about that. For more information related to today's webcast, including where you can leave us an evaluation and any feedback, which we definitely do rely on, please click the links on the webcast console. Thank you again for attending today's webcast, Going Digital, the Rise of Digital Freight Brokerage, presented by the Journal of Commerce, part of American Trade Division. On behalf of Logistics for sponsoring today's program, and Mike, Adam, and Michael for outstanding presentations and discussion. I'm Alessandra Barrett. Have a great day.
Great. Thank you.